Hi everyone, so yesterday I tried out an Andariel Spiritborn build and gotta say this is actually blasting pretty hard. So I was wanting to try this for a while, but I just did not get an Andariel's helm until now. And yesterday I finally got one, and then I respec my Stinger Spiritborn into Andariel's because the setups are actually fairly similar. This is based on poison explosions with noxious resonance, and it looks like a quill volley build because quill volley has very high lucky hit chances, so this is my choice here to actually trigger the Andariels. But the setup is made very differently compared to some others. So here we just try to optimize around high attack speed, high lucky hit, and then raw damage bonuses to boost the noxious resonance explosions that come from the Andariels. I gotta say, this was actually a breeze. So you see here, I'm chilling in a tier 128 and blasting to the boss in like 3 minutes or 4 minutes or something like that. It has incredible AoE damage. Unfortunately, not that much single target damage when we compare to, let's say, pure Quill Volley. But I think the potential of this build would probably be lying somewhere in like tier 140 or so right now, if you go all in with really good gear, and thanks to some of the bugs that the Spiritborn is profiting from, including this build. There's not really much of a way around those bugs, so Spiritborn is generally just kind of like really high up there right now. But if you want to play an alternative build that works a little bit differently, then maybe Andariel's Spiritborn is for you. I have a planner for you guys, I will show that off in a second, but I just want to talk a bit more about the gameplay here. So you see here that I try to group up enemies with the vortex, try to stack them close together because you have the noxious resonance explosions that makes it so that the more enemies you have, the more you will just deal AoE damage. So this actually feels a little bit like an exploding palm bonk almost from the other 3 times, for example, because you have this insane like combo potential in large packs. And then when you have single target fights, you see that the damage kind of goes down because you don't hit multiple targets at once. You don't get the noxious resonance explosions. But here, when you group up enemies, you see I can decimate an entire elite pack in like 3 seconds or something on a tier 128. It gets pretty wild. And for example, if you were in a party and you have someone who has like really big single target damage, then I think this could probably kill stuff all the way to like the pit cap, basically. So this is what I expect here, as long as someone can somehow do boss damage. But yeah, either way, I had a blast of this build. I'll probably experiment more. I also made a speed farming version of this that is going a little bit faster. So you can definitely do something like 2-minute pit runs or so if you try. And it just works. It's just easy to set up, and as long as you have an Andariel's Visage, you can kind of get started on this build. So here's my planner for this build. This was based on the Stinger build, and then I tweaked it from there, but it works kind of differently. So Andariel's Visage is required, of course. This is the item that makes this build work, and what you need to know about this is that it doesn't work with certain very important damage multipliers. For example, unyielding hits. I tried this and I could not get it to work. I'm not sure what to do about it. I don't think it just doesn't work with Andariel's. So we can't go armor stacking, which is what I was originally going to do. And if that was working, then this would be even crazier, to be honest. But instead, we have to go for the plane's power aspect. We have to get these mystic circles. We use Jaguar skills because we have the Jaguar primary hull, so we can trigger this very easily. And yeah, sometimes you have the circles, sometimes you don't. It's mostly relevant on the boss anyway, and on the boss, usually you're fine with this. So in AoE packs, as I mentioned, you have insane AoE damage. You don't really care too much about the circles, but it is like the next best damage multiplier here. What we have though is a 2-handed redirected force. This gives us tons of crit damage, and right now there's also a bug where when you have extra block chance above 100%, you get even more of a benefit from redirected force. So there is, for example, armored height that gives you 100%, the quarter staff gives you 45, here's 10 from patient guard, and we have the interdiction aspect that gives you up to 15% block chance per resolve stack. So you try to get a lot of resolve stacks. As you see here, we have the 13 temper and another 13 temper plus the gorilla secondary. You can have 36 maximum resolve stacks, resulting in something like 500% block chance, 600% block chance, and it gives you insane amounts of damage from redirected force. So this is how the class works currently. And eventually there might be a bug fix for this redirected force stuff, but it definitely boosts the damage quite a lot. And you may be thinking, why are we stacking all that crit damage when you have an Andariel's, which is a dot setup? Well, we use Noxious Resonance, as I mentioned at the start. So here, the more crit damage you have, the more damage these explosions deal. You don't actually have to wait for the Andariel's to do its thing. You just apply the Andariel's and then you pop with like the entire pack basically. Everything just explodes with Noxious Resonance. And then comes the Jaguar Hall. So the Jaguar Hall can also profit from those Noxious Resonance hits. It does not count into the 15 hits to trigger the Jaguar Hall, but the damage done by Noxious Resonance does count into this damage dealt in the last 0.5 seconds. And we have an insane amount of attack speed here with rebounding aspect, where the quills come back after you shoot them. You always shoot 8 of them at a time, actually a little bit more when you have the chance to cast twice like this here. And then you can get something like 100 hits per second or something on the target. You can proc Jaguar Hall multiple times per second on a target, and it just kind of goes really wild. So this is the combo here, and Jaguar Hall just kind of kills everything in the end. We combine all this with a Fist of Fate. Unfortunately, Fist of Fate also still does not work for the Andariel'S proc at the unique effect, but it has a lot of lucky hit chance, which actually allows you to trigger the Andariel'S much more often. So this is the main reason why we use it, and also we don't really have that many crazy other like offensive aspects here. So the lucky hit chance is just really nice. And you have a Star Disguise. This gives us core ranks that we don't care about, and also crit chance we don't care about, but it has a good chunk of res, attack speed, and lucky hit chance as well. And then it also makes the resource management easier and gives us a 50% unconditional damage buff as long as we keep spamming our abilities. So this makes it somewhat easy to cap the res. You see I don't even have Rakonov or Jens Blessing here, and you can actually cap res relatively easily. I just have like one res roll and then gem, and the Star Disguise. And since we don't do unyielding hit stacking, we can reach the armor cap relatively easily with just like an armor roll here, and that's about it. And for the gameplay, as you just saw in the clip at the start, we mostly try to group up enemies with Vortex. That also knocks everything down, which is neat. Then you can follow up with a Scourge. This gives you the extra damage. It also has the extra resource gain here from Reinforced Scourge. So this was kind of nice. If you feel like you're having trouble, you can just use the Scourge more often and you're going to be fine. In fact, I didn't even need that, and with like a really good setup later, this is actually kind of optional, but it's a nice backup to have. You can also just like press your defensive cooldowns to get endurance procs. This also gives you vigor. For example, with Jackham Shell, we have a lot of endurance ranks, and we also have the sapping Paragon board here. So every time you attack 3 times in a row, you also get 15% of your vigor, and you also have stuff like Ravager here, for example, where we can get extra resource generation. It depends a little bit on your exact setup and what you are doing. So for example, here in the push version, I actually have the other Ravager upgrade to get even more hits to activate the Jaguar primary Spirit Hall, because you get 4 extra strikes every time you attack, which is very nice. But for example, in speed farming, I use the Measure Ravager, so this gives you 30% extra vigor. Also, you just don't really need the Jaguar procs that much when you're just like blasting for everything and one-shotting stuff. So this is kind of irrelevant. And then you also, for example, don't need the Scourge here. So this makes it very easier to maintain the resources. There's also the Vigorous passive here. For example, if you feel like you need more resources, you can get that, or even Velocity. So this also helps you out. So there's various ways to make the resource setup work. Just be aware of the options. Press your Scourge, press your defensive cooldowns, or use the Measured Ravager upgrade. But usually with the Star Disguise in the mix at least, it's totally fine. And there's also a few Paragon nodes here that you want to be aware of. You can also invest a little bit more there if you need more resources. And finally, here's the Paragon. So we have these 5 glyphs here. Bane is required for just poison synergy and also to give us the conversions buff. We need the poison damage here. Then we have Fitness, which is a crit glyph, also helps us with the resources, by the way. Then we have Spirit, also more crit damage. Both these scale the Noxious Resonance passive quite a lot. And then we have Canny and Colossal. Colossal is used here mostly for the resolve stacking. So for the secondary effect, it gives us extra damage per resolve, and you can actually get a lot of resolve stacks, as I mentioned. We don't actually like max out this glyph here, so the gorilla damage does not apply to anything. And Canny is just like extra non-physical, which is helpful. Other than that, the setup is pretty straightforward. We try to pick up all of the offensive passives that kind of apply to Andariel'S here. Unfortunately, some of them do not. Like for example, we have the Jaguar primary hall, but you can't really benefit from Furnace because the Andariel'S or Noxious Resonance is not a Jaguar skill. So we leave that out, for example. Similar with like, you know, some of the other like spirit-based offensive passives here, like Ravenous or so. We can't really use those, but we can use some stuff like Resilient, for example. We press Armored Hide, we get that buff. In general, you want to try to press Armored Hide as much as possible. We actually put 5 ranks here to increase the duration. And with Jackham Shell, you also get it back very quickly. So Jackham Shell just has an incredible amount of cooldown recovery. It's basically everything comes back 4 times faster, or it's like the same as 75% cooldown reduction. The only downside is that it drains your life all the time. But we have tons of life per hit here. We have life per hit on the Jack and Shell itself and on the Andariels, and even higher value. So this just helps you to like instantly fill your health bar again with the number of hits that you're doing. And then you also just get like lots of extra healing all over the place here. But especially when you're running into a boss arena and there's no enemies to fight, then you might actually drop HP. So it is here, for example, I press a potion as I walk towards the boss. Or sometimes even when you are just dodging mechanics on the boss and not actually hitting them, then you can also lose your life as your cooldowns keep ticking down. So you want to be a bit aware of how many cooldowns have you pressed lately. And, you know, are you actually attacking something to get this life per hit proc? Usually you're totally fine. You see here my life stays always at 100%, even when I have 4 or 5 cooldowns running, as long as I keep attacking. But sometimes if you're not attacking, then your life might drop. But we have also a bunch of barriers in this build. So we have, first of all, the Bulwark here. We cast another skill from another class. This is the Soul Q combo. And here we have the Tam Watt combo. So we use the Decrepify, which is very cheap. We only need to attack 4 times to proc it from the core skills. And then every 8 times we attack, we get a Bulwark. So we have a bunch of barriers there. And we also have the Auspicious here. So even when you're not fighting, you get a bunch of barrier. We also have barrier generation here in our gems. This helps us to give both of these barriers a much larger value. And like this, you're usually barriered for all of your life, which also helps tremendously with the Viscous Shield bug right now. So we want to try to stay at full barrier all the time, but the Jack and Shell should not kill you because you have a lot of extra barriers anyway, even when nothing is going on. And that's also it for this Andariel'S SPIRITBORN setup. So I'll probably try to optimize this a little bit further. There might be some tweaks that I will make, but for now I'm actually very happy with the result. And right now we don't have a maxwell guide for this, so maybe we'll make one, we'll see. But if you want to play something with Andariel'S, then I think this is a pretty solid setup here for the class. So hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think about it if you try it. Otherwise, see you guys next time.